here with you, High Noon Leatherworks, for another leather adventure. And today we're going to be making a pattern for a concealed carry holster for a 9mm semi-automatic pistol. So come on in and let's get started. Alright, so first of all, got a Security 9 Ruger, no magazine, clear, it's empty for safety purposes obviously. So when I'm doing a holster like this for a customer, normally I'll do the pattern off of their gun. The gun that I'm making this for is an M&P Shield 9mm, but it's basically the exact same frame as the Ruger Security 9. So we've already test fitted. I've already made a holster for this one. This is mine. We already test fitted the M&P Shield into that holster and it fit perfect. So I'm just going to use this so that I don't have to keep the customer's everyday carry. So first thing I'm going to do is set that out of the way. Got me a piece of scrap poster board here, just white poster board. I've already got a center line here from a previous marking, so I'm going to measure that, and it's about 12 inches. Same way here, so I'll mark that at 6 on this end, and I'll make a straight line down the center, and that's how I get started on my pattern. And what that does is that allows me to put the center of this on that line. So I literally stand it up like so, vertically. And most of these like this, these semi-autos, they're gonna have the slide's gonna be flat, so it will sit there. Some of them are a little rounded, they won't sit there by themselves, you may have to hold it. But what I like to do is I like to put the front sight on that line and the center of the back sight on this line. Then very carefully just roll it over, don't let it move side to side, and then you can hold that down, and I just take a ballpoint cheap pen, and it's got a round barrel on it, so it allows me to just follow all those curves all the way around this side. Now, I could take this and roll it back and come over here and do the same thing on this side, and that would be fine. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mirror the other side, and I'll show you how I do that. Pretty simple. What I want to do too is make sure I have the part that comes up here of the holster, that I have it the same as the example. And that's because of the sights. So I want to make sure that I use the same contour, and you can see this one was built a little bit differently than I'm going to build this one, but I want to use the same contour, cover the trigger guard, so about right here, I'll mark it right at the top of the trigger guard, and then I'll mark it right at the bottom in the center on the sights. And that'll be this piece right here where the pistol will fit down in there, and the sights, the rear sights, will be sticking out, so it doesn't mess with your adjustment of your sights if they're adjustable rear sights. And then the other piece is right here, and that covers the trigger guard and the trigger. And then I end up with two marks, one here at the end of the trigger guard and one here at the bottom of the rear sights. And then I can either use a French curve or I can freehand it. I'm going to use this holster that I have. This one's going to be just a little bit shorter, and I want to bring this up, and I'm actually just going to freehand it. Until those two lines meet, and then I always double, triple check everything all the time, and I can make adjustments to this also after I cut it out, so there's no reason why I can't make adjustments after the fact too. So you can see I already made one adjustment there, freehanding that. And then what I like to do on all my leather holsters, it seems to work out really well if I, let me extend this line over here to the center. It seems to work out really well because if I just cut this out and then cut the leather that exact same size, the leather is going to be too short. So I guarantee it. I've done it before, and it's just going to be too small. So you have to allow, you're allowing for this part of the pistol, but you got to allow for half of the thickness also, and that's this part. So what I do normally is I'll measure the slide, and this slide is 1 inch. So if I split that difference, that's a 1/2 inch. So that's where I normally start. So what I'll do is I'll add just maybe a 1/4 inch on the bottom where the barrel would start coming out or hit the edge, because that'll give me a little extra. And then I'll go ahead and make it 3/8 there, and as I get around to the corner, I'll make that a 1/2 inch. So what I'm doing is I'm extending my pattern, and I'm making it kind of like a dot to dot type situation here. I'm just putting little dashes. And I'll come on around. I want to make sure that I don't get too close in some of these areas. Alright. And as I come around those corners, I get my dashes or my dots just a little bit closer to one another so I can make a turn. And again, you can always cut some of this off if it's too big. Once you cut out your leather, you can trim it, but if your leather is cut too small, then there's no way you're going to be able to fix that except to start over. So I will go ahead and put these lines together, and all I'm doing is, you could use a straight edge, but there's too many curves to make it look right. So I'm just going to freehand this around these corners until I have all these lines connected. And what I'll do is I'll double check my pattern 2 or 3 times, and then I'll trim it to the final size that I want it. So I've got this side, I've got my center. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little stylus, put my straight edge on the center line, and I'm just going to take that rounded head stylus and put me a little crease or score on that line. And what that's going to do is that's going to allow that to fold real easy, because that's poster board, it's pretty thick. And what I can do at that point is I can flip it over and it'll kind of give me an idea about the size, whether it's going to be big enough or not. And see how you can smash that poster board down, and that'll give you an idea whether you've got enough here for your stitching and for your gun to fit in there. And this will be wet formed, so it will stretch some once I get it sewn up and everything. I think what I'm going to do, just for safety's sake, is I'm going to add about 1/8 of an inch to that 1/2 inch. So I'll make it about 5/8. And as I said, it's always easier to make it bigger and then trim it down later if you need to. So you can see I just went around and I put another line on the outside of that. That's my cut line. So I don't want to cut it on this center line. I don't want to cut it in half, because I'll show you what I'm going to do with that. So I'll start on the center line, and I'm just following the contour of that line, and notice I'm not trying to hit every little change that I made. I'm just following that outside line, because that outside line is the one that I decided would be big enough for, you got to leave room for your stitching. So I'll come along here, and then that cuts that part of the pattern out. I've already scored it on the center, folded over, use my pen, and this is where you don't have to do it twice. Fold it over on that scored center line, take your pen and just follow your pattern on the other side. And then that way you get a perfect match. This side is going to match this side perfectly now. Quick, easy. Now I could come across the center line and I'll follow that line as perfectly as I can so that I do match the other side. And again, I like to turn my work as I go instead of turning my body or my hand. And these self-healing cutting mats are the ticket when it comes to this stuff. It makes it so much easier to cut through, and it doesn't dull your knife blade near as quickly. So I'll come back at the bottom, I'll meet that. You see how that pattern popped right out of there? I can discard my excess, and I'll keep that because I might be able to use that for a small knife sheath or something. And you can see now I've got my pattern. Fold that over. I can take the pistol. I can lay it. Make sure my sights are touching the center line. I can fold that over. Now I can kind of take these pieces out here on the edge where my stitching would go and kind of squeeze those together and make sure that I'm going to have enough to stitch. And it looks like it's going to be a real nice fit. And here's what it looks like on the side. So it comes up to the sights, the rear sights. The muzzle is covered. And the trigger guard is covered. So there's no way it could accidentally hit anything, and again, it'll be wet formed, so it'll be snug in there. So I've got my pattern. I'll mark that, and I'll mark it as a Ruger Security 9 and a Smith & Wesson M&P shield. That way I'll know if I ever somebody else wants one for that. A lot of times what happens is I make one of these and they'll have a buddy or something and they'll see it and say, hey, I got one of those. I'd like to have a holster like that. Then if they want one from me, then all I got to do is pull this pattern back out and start making the holster. So that's the pattern. That's how I make them. Alright, so that's how I make my patterns. Simple, cheap, quick. Please, I hope you enjoy these videos. If you do, hit the like button. Please subscribe, and I'll see you next time.